The normal sleep cycle includes 5 stages, and each cycle lasts about 90 to 110 minutes. Once the last stage, REM sleep, is complete, then the cycle begins again at stage 1. During stage 1, it is easy to be woken up because it is a very light sleep where you drift in and out of sleep. Eye movement and muscle activity slow down, but sudden muscle contractions can occur after sensations of falling, which can be experienced during this stage. In stage 1, theta brain waves are present. Theta brain waves are one of the slowest brain waves and are typically associated with states of enhanced creativity, relaxation, daydreaming, and sleep dream activity. During stage 2, eye movement stops and body temperature increases. Slow brain waves occur with sudden bursts of rapid brain waves. Stage 3 is the first stage of deep sleep, and the brain switches between delta brain waves and other waves that are smaller and faster. Delta waves are very slow and are associated with complete unconsciousness. Stage 4 is also deep sleep, and almost only delta waves occur during the stage. The last stage of sleep is REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. Like the name implies, rapid eye movement occurs. Breathing is irregular, rapid, and shallow. Limb muscles become temporarily paralyzed during this stage, and heart and blood pressure increase. Most dreams occur during REM sleep, and if woken during REM sleep, then the dreams can be easily remembered. Dreams can occur in earlier stages, but in these dreams you are watching, and in REM you are active in the dream.
Mental activity during sleep. Mental activity during sleep is said to be higher than when you're awake. The main difference is that mental activity is organized while you're awake and disorganized while you're asleep. This is why your dreams are surreal and unpredictable.
The mental activity of sleep is really higher than when you're awake in a lot of ways. It's very, very active. And they've showed, they have a lot of studies that show that. But there's differences. There's things going on while you're awake versus your sleep. You're not solving problems. You're not, while you're asleep, you're not solving problems. You're not going through stressors. You might be dreaming out your stressors, and so therefore maybe having a nightmare or a very, very worrisome dream when you wake up. So it's a different level of activity. It's a more organized activity while you're awake versus asleep. It's kind of disorganized, but it's very high level.
Insomnia, when people have difficulty sleeping, it is very common, and it happens to 30% to 50% of general population, and 10% suffer from chronic insomnia, which lasts a long time. It affects children and people of all ages. Symptoms for insomnia are lack of energy, anxiety, poor social functions, headaches, and increased errors and mistakes. Insomnia is divided into 3 categories: transient insomnia that lasts a week or less, short-term insomnia lasts more than a week and it resolves in 3 weeks, and chronic insomnia lasts more than 3 weeks. Insomnia is caused by hygiene, medical conditions, sleep disorders, and stress. Insomnia is treated depending on the symptoms. It could be treated by non-medical or behavioral approaches and medical therapy.
Stress out about getting to sleep, so that I already have a hard time falling asleep, and once I'm asleep I wake up a lot, generally about like 10-15 times a night. It makes me like tired, obviously, and I get grumpy when I'm tired. It makes it hard to focus on things, and I always want to sleep or take naps. There's more like good weeks and bad weeks. Like some weeks I have a really hard time sleeping, mostly due to stress. Other weeks I'll be a little better. I guess there's not really a time, just I'm sure there's times I don't remember waking up, but usually more towards the morning, like 2, 3, and then more at 5 o'clock before I have to get up, because I know I have to get up soon.
Insomnia is the bulk of all the sleep disorders, except for narcolepsy doesn't really fall in that category per se. Insomnia is basically what I do. And we're talking about people who have difficulties there's 2 types of insomnia. People have difficulties in going to sleep, and there are people who have difficulties in staying asleep. Okay? So they call the difficulty in going to sleep, sleep onset insomnia, and the difficulty in staying asleep is sleep maintenance insomnia. Usually the maintenance problem is the one that develops into an onset problem. Most of the sleep disorders fall into one of those insomnia categories, going to sleep or staying asleep.
Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder, usually genetic, where someone is extremely sleepy during the day and may fall asleep at inappropriate times in an occurrence called a sleep attack. People with narcolepsy usually experience REM sleep earlier than people without it. Symptoms of narcolepsy are made up of the tetrad of narcolepsy. This includes cataplexy, which is the weakening of muscles and random collapsing, sleep paralysis, which is when you're awake but unable to move and have hallucinations, and hypnagogic hallucinations, which may be visual, auditory, or feely, and finally automatic behavior, which is when you do stuff while asleep without memories of what you did, otherwise known as sleepwalking. Narcolepsy is believed to be a decrease in the neurotransmitter hypercretin. Hypercretin works to promote wakefulness. Narcolepsy has no true cure. Its symptoms are alleviated by drugs called central neurosystem stimulants, and narcolepsy is tested with brain scans, genetic tests, and other sleep monitoring tests.
Narcoleptic people tend to have, there's a high incidence of sleep apnea and periodic limb movements in narcoleptics too, so it makes it difficult for them to stay asleep as well. But if you talk about narcolepsy in its pure sense, the diagnosis is really related to the tetrad of symptoms, basically. It's excessive daytime sleepiness, and we're talking about somebody who naps maybe 3 times during the week or more and is really dragging. We're talking about somebody who may have cataplexy. Cataplexy is where I told you a joke, or I got you really angry, you got really furious, you exerted a lot of energy, and all of a sudden you just passed out and fell asleep. And you could be standing and just pass out. They've actually genetically engineered dogs, Doberman pinschers, that basically you get them really excited and all of a sudden they pass out. They're sleeping. Narcolepsy is actually a person who falls right into dream sleep. As human beings, as adult human beings, we should not be allowed to drive right into dream sleep. Say you're to fall asleep at the wheel, okay? And if you run into dream sleep, REM sleep, you become, your muscle tone becomes completely flaccid. You're just like this. Well, if you were to fall asleep at the wheel, you'd have at least some kind of tone. You know, you're kind of like this and you're still holding on. But in dream sleep, you're completely relaxed.
Night terrors happen during the deepest stages of sleep, which are stages 3 and 4. And they are unlike dreams because dreams happen during REM sleep. Night terrors happen usually to kids ages 3 to 12. During a night terror, neurons in the brain are misfiring, and it is often diagnosed as PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is when a person goes through a traumatic event and then has flashbacks of the event. A full night terror lasts between 5 to 20 minutes. The biggest difference between a night terror and a dream is you cannot remember a night terror.
My oldest daughter, Laura, experienced those when she was about 4 years old. And I didn't know what it was at first. I thought she was just having bad dreams. She would wake up in the middle of the night, or it seemed like she was awake. Her eyes were open. She could walk. And she was just thrashing and screaming and ranting and making no sense at all. And I couldn't do anything to reason with her. I eventually just had to take her into another room, a room that was safe for her to be in, and she could thrash and roll around and scream and yell and have her fit. And I would sit at the door to keep her from getting out. And then just after a while, maybe 15, 20, sometimes a half an hour, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes a half an hour, she would just all of a sudden calm down and totally relax and lay down and go back to sleep. And then I would pick her up, take her back, and put her back in bed. And I didn't know what it was for a long time. Well, for a few weeks, until I talked to her pediatrician about it, and he said those were night terrors and that they're not awake. They just appear to be awake, but they're in a deep dream, and they have no awareness of what's actually happening around them.
Typically for kids between 3 to 6 years of age, and they can have it for various reasons. And so they may actually be having some kind of primary sleep disorder, but oftentimes they grow out of it. But when it becomes a problem, like every night, now they're really tired, maybe it's time for us to evaluate what the primary sleep disorder is all about.